Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia, and today we're continuing the reign of Cao Rui Let's Talk Lore series with episode 5 titled Cao Xiu's Death. Now last episode we ended as Sima Yi surprised Meng Da when his army showed up at the front gates of Shangyong in just 8 days, and what followed was a ferocious siege that lasted for another 16, as Sima Yi assaulted Shangyong from every side, with rafts being constructed on the fly to attack even from the 3 sides that were protected by a lake. While the city defenses would hold, morale plummeted as the defenders inside felt continued resistance was meaningless. And by the end of the 16th day, Officer Deng Xian, who was actually Meng Da's own nephew, and Officer Li Fu decided to open the gates and surrender as Sima Yi's armies flooded into the city. Meng Da was executed on the spot, as his army of roughly 10,000 men were also taken as prisoners. In addition, their families, which numbered roughly 7,000 households, were forced to migrate to the northern province of You as punishment for their involvement in Meng Da's rebellion. And apart from pacifying Meng Da, Sima Yi also didn't trust Shen Yi and the rest of the Shen clan in the region. So in the aftermath of his victory, as many local officials in the region came by his army camp to offer gifts and praises, Sima Yi hinted to Shen Yi that he was expecting a gift from him. Not wanting to upset a powerful co-regent, Shen Yi personally arrived at Sima Yi's camp to present him a gift. But the moment Shen Yi stepped into Sima Yi's camp, Sima Yi had him tied up, as Sima Yi was going to send him back to Luoyang, where he too would become a political hostage for the rest of his life, much like his older brother. Lastly, while Sima Yi's army was recovering in the Shangyong region, 7,000 Shuhan troops escaped from the borders and thought to surrender to Sima Yi, even though records of this surrender only existed in the Book of Jin and cannot be cross-referenced from records of the Three Kingdoms, which makes me doubt if this actually happened, as when it came to Sima Yi's military track record, the Book of Jin is known to be very unreliable, as it was very generous to Sima Yi. Regardless, Sima Yi's swift victory over Meng Da still impressed Emperor Cao Rui, who ordered Sima Yi to return to Van to continue preparing the army there, as Sun Quan still appeared to be Wei's biggest threat up until that point. And when discussing the best strategies against Sun Quan with the emperor, Sima Yi has suggested that the Yangtze River is the key to Sun Quan's defenses, and to crack the Yangtze River, key points such as Xiakou and Dongguan are places that Wei must gain control of. To this end, Sima Yi suggested a feigned land assault on the areas around Lujiang to the east, which would force Sun Quan to pull his troops from Jiangling eastwards. Then with the area around Xiakou vacated, a naval force from Xiangyang can then sail down and seize control of Xiakou and proceed to slowly choke out the south until Sun Quan capitulates. And to realize this plan, Cao Rui positioned 2 of his co-regents in Sima Yi and Cao Xiu in the south to make preparations, as Cao Xiu was the governor over the Yang province as he would prepare the land assault, while Sima Yi remained in the Jin province to prepare for the naval assault. But before this assault was ready, Zhuge Liang's first northern expedition was launched, and immediately, over half of the western commanderies surrendered on the spot without putting up any resistances, and the mood within the Wei court became gloom and doom, as many worried that Shu Han would soon gain control of the entire Liang province, as the undermanned western garrisons had been neglected for far too long by Wei. At this critical juncture, Cao Rui spoke to his court confidently as he compared Zhuge Liang and Shu Han to the turtle that had been content to live comfortably in its shell, but now it had stretched out its head and limbs, and it was the perfect time to strike back, as Cao Rui made plans for his own first campaign to answer the Shu Han threat. And with co-regents Sima Yi and Cao Xiu already deployed down south, co-regent Cao Zhen was selected to lead a 50,000-strong force to reinforce the west and to answer Zhao Yun's attack through the Baoxie path.
General Zhang He would act as the vanguard force to race across the low mountain ranges in an effort to save Guo Huai's western garrison forces, while Emperor Cao Rui himself would march to Chang'an to act as the last line of defense in the west, if it comes to that. Fortunately, it will not come to that, as Zhang He would defeat Ma Su at the critical battle of Jieting and force Zhuge Liang's forces to abandon their first northern expedition, as the Shu Han forces would hastily retreat back to Hanzhong. Now, I'm skipping the details of the northern expeditions mainly because we already covered it in great details in our Northern Expedition lore series, so for those who are interested, feel free to check those out. Now, with the first northern expedition over, Cao Rui would return from Chang'an back to Luoyang after spending just a few weeks there, as he would arrive in Chang'an on March 18th and leave in early April. And for a while, there was finally a moment of peace for the Kingdom of Wei, as Cao Rui would spend the majority of the year focusing on reforming the Confucian education standards and the official selection process, continuing the efforts laid forth by his father Cao Pi. But by September of the same year, Cao Xiu made the fatal mistake at the Battle of Shiting, where he fell into Sun Quan's trap with the false surrender of Zhou Fang. And much like the Northern Expedition, since we already covered the Battle of Shiting in our Emperor of Wu Let's Talk Lore series, and since Cao Rui didn't involve himself in the decision-making process that led to the disaster of Shiting, we're simply going to fast forward to the results, as Cao Xiu's stubborn decision to continue his march to Shiting after already sensing the trap ended up having multiple repercussions for Wei. First, Cao Xiu himself would die roughly 2 months after his defeat due to a complication from a back wound that would see the death of Cao Rui's first co-regent. At the time, Cao Xiu was the highest ranking commander in Wei, and with his death, that position would shift now to Cao Zhen, as the attention of the Wei military would also shift from the south to the west, as Cao Zhen was in charge of the western front. Furthermore, Cao Xiu's defeat ruined Sima Yi's plan of attack against Sun Quan, as Cao Xiu's reckless gambit removed the threat of the eastern land offensive and emboldened Sun Quan to declare himself as the third emperor just a year after. Lastly, Cao Xiu's defeat in the east also spurred Zhuge Liang to immediately launch a second northern expedition out west with the attack on Chencang. Fortunately, Cao Zhen had already foreseen this move, as Hao Zhao was sent ahead of time to reinforce the fortifications at Chencang, as Chencang's defenses would prove too much for Zhuge Liang to overcome before the Wei main forces would arrive to force Zhuge Liang to retreat once more. More importantly, Sun Quan's victory and Zhuge Liang's persistent attack out west forced Cao Rui to take a passive approach to another major event that happened at the end of 228, as Gongsun Yuan would usurp his uncle Gongsun Gong and gain control of the Liaodong commandery in the northeast. When this had happened, even Gongsun Yuan's own brother, Gongsun Huang, who was serving as a political hostage within the Wei courts at Luoyang, ended up warning Cao Rui and the court that his brother was definitely going to rebel. But with Sun Quan and Zhuge Liang being more pressing matters, Cao Rui decided to take the appeasement approach, as he would choose to not punish Gongsun Yuan for his usurpation, but instead validate his position as the administrator of Liaodong in place of his uncle. This would obviously come back to bite Cao Rui and Wei in the future, as Gongsun Yuan's ambition will soon outgrow himself, as he would start his flirtation with Sun Quan. But for the time being, it seemed only logical to focus Wei's attention on the other two kingdoms. And with that, our episode here also comes to an end, as we'll come back next time to see that war will continue to rage across all of Wei's borders through most of Cao Rui's reign. So as always, hopefully you all have enjoyed this episode enough to hit that like button to help support the channel, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!